Machine learning is a very challenging area of computer science and engineering, and there are many different approaches to building machine learning systems. As yet, there's no real classification for these different approaches, but in his book, The Master Algorithm, Pedro Domingos of the University of Washington provides a coherent and accessible overview to the different methods currently being pursued. The book describes 5 what he calls tribes, which each emphasize a different method of machine learning, with each being particularly well suited to solving for some core challenge. Domingos begins by identifying 5 basic methods through which a computer can build a model and then associates these with the different approaches currently taken to machine learning. First is filling in gaps in existing knowledge through inverse deduction. Secondly, mimicking the human brain, which is associated with the Connectionist neural network approach. Thirdly, evolutionary selection, which is associated with techniques that enable the computer to simulate evolution. Fourth is reducing uncertainties through statistics and Bayesian inference. And lastly, making contrasts between old and new sets of information through the use of analogy. The Symbolist Approach is said to operate on the basis of formal logic, and more specifically the premise of inverse deduction. The approach is to think of deductive learning as being the inverse of deduction. Deduction is going from general rules to specific facts. The opposite of that is called induction, which is going from specific facts to general rules. For example, if we can figure out that 2 plus 2 is 4, then we can also fill in the gap in the equation where we know that we have 2 and have to find what we have to add to that to get 4. The system has to ask itself what is the knowledge that is missing and acquire that knowledge through the analysis of existing datasets. A second approach is based upon the network structure of the brain and how the brain learns through encoding patterns within neural networks. This is the neural network approach. An artificial neural network is an interconnected group of nodes, akin to the vast network of neurons in the brain. Here, each circular node represents an artificial neuron, and an arrow represents a connection from the output of one artificial neuron to the input of another. The network is trained on data, so that a specific set of connections between the nodes forms to represent a pattern. The weight of the connections between the nodes is altered with each iteration, so that the output to the system better matches the desired output. For example, Google used this approach to train its computers to identify cats in YouTube videos. Much of the breakthroughs in machine learning in recent years have come from this approach, and because it's well suited for dealing with big data, we'll be looking more closely at how neural nets and deep learning methods work in the coming modules. Another very important approach is that of trying to simulate the process of evolution. Genetic algorithms